God, it hurt!" The virgin bride cried. The lonely cowboy pulled it back and froze. The ceremony lasted exactly 7 minutes. Reverend Walsh spoke the words with perfunctory efficiency, clearly uncomfortable with the union he was legally obligated to perform. Timid Tim stood at the makeshift altar in his Sunday best, the suit hanging loose on his slight frame, his hands trembling so violently he could barely hold the simple gold band. Beside him towered Starlight, nearly 7 feet of muscle and contradiction, wearing the same tattered wedding gown that had caused whispers throughout Copper Ridge for the 3 days since their arrival. Tim had placed his advertisement 6 months earlier, desperate and honest. "Weak man seeks strong partner. Homestead needs work I cannot provide alone. Offering honest partnership, not romance, must be willing to work hard land." He'd expected no responses, or perhaps a widow past childbearing years looking for security. Instead, he'd received a single letter written in careful script. "I am strong, I work hard, I ask only for respect and a home. I will arrive in October. Starlight." The name should have warned him. When Starlight stepped off the stage 3 days ago, the entire town had gathered to stare. The figure was undeniably masculine in build. Broad shoulders, powerful arms, a jaw that could have been carved from granite. But the dress, the flowers woven into long dark hair, the way Starlight moved with a strange grace despite the intimidating size, all suggested something more complex than simple classification allowed. "I should tell you," Starlight had said immediately, voice deep but not unkind, "I'm not what most would call a proper woman or a proper man. I'm something in between. If that's a problem, I'll get back on that stage right now." Tim, whose entire life had been defined by being not quite man enough, had looked up at this towering figure and felt an unexpected kinship. "I'm not what most would call a proper man either, so maybe we'll manage together." Now, as Walsh pronounced them married and Tim lifted on his toes to kiss his new spouse's cheek, the gathered witnesses dispersed quickly. Relieved the awkward ceremony had concluded, Doc Beasley, the town's physician, approached as they collected their belongings. "Timothy," he said quietly, "I know this is unconventional, but if either of you needs medical advice, my door is open. No judgment. Just medicine." Tim nodded gratefully, though he couldn't imagine what the doctor meant. Starlight remained silent, face unreadable. The ride to Tim's homestead took 2 hours. The property sat in a valley between 2 ridges, isolated enough that neighbors were measured in miles rather than yards. The cabin was small but well built. The barn desperately needed repairs, and the fencing had more gaps than posts. Starlight surveyed it all with a professional eye. "I can work with this. Bones are good even if the flesh is weak." Starlight paused. No offense meant. None taken. It's true enough. Tim helped unload Starlight's single trunk. "There's only 1 bedroom. I can sleep in the barn until we figure out we're married now." Starlight's voice carried a resignation that Tim recognized, the sound of someone who'd learned not to expect kindness. "Married people share a bed. That's the arrangement." "Only if you want to. I meant what I wrote. Partnership first. Everything else is negotiable." Starlight looked at him for a long moment, searching for deception and finding none. "You're an odd man, Timothy." "Tim. Just Tim. And yes, I suppose I am." They spent the afternoon working together, falling into an easy rhythm. Starlight's strength was extraordinary. Lifting fence posts Tim couldn't budge, hauling water barrels that would have required 2 men, repairing the barn roof with casual efficiency. Tim handled the detail work, measuring, planning, managing the livestock with gentle competence. By sunset, they'd accomplished more than Tim had managed in the previous month. Dinner was simple: beans, cornbread, and coffee, strong enough to strip paint. They ate in comfortable silence until Starlight spoke. "What do you expect tonight? From me, I mean." Tim set down his fork carefully. "I expect we'll both be exhausted and sleep soundly. Beyond that, nothing." "Tim, we're married. There are expectations, duties." Whose expectations? Not mine. I married you for help with the ranch, and you married me for a home. Let's start there and see where it goes." Starlight's shoulders, perpetually tense, relaxed fractionally. "You really mean that?" "I do." That night, they prepared for bed with awkward courtesy, each changing in separate corners. Tim noticed Starlight's body bore scars, some old, some newer, telling a story of hardship and survival. When they lay down on opposite sides of the bed, leaving careful space between them, Tim felt the mattress dip significantly under Starlight's weight. "Thank you," Starlight whispered into the darkness, "for not demanding. Most men would." "I'm not most men. Everyone's made that abundantly clear my whole life. Maybe that's a good thing." They fell asleep like that. Two people who'd spent their lives being told they were wrong, finding unexpected peace in their shared wrongness. The following weeks established their partnership. Starlight worked with tireless energy, transforming the struggling homestead into something functional. Tim managed the practical aspects, selling surplus vegetables in town, maintaining equipment, planning for the coming winter. They worked well together, two puzzle pieces that shouldn't fit, but somehow did. Physically, they maintained careful boundaries, a hand on a shoulder when offering encouragement, sitting close by the fire but not touching. The careful dance of two people learning to trust. Tim noticed Starlight relaxing gradually, the perpetual defensive tension easing, and Starlight noticed Tim growing more confident, speaking up where he once would have remained silent. A month into their marriage, lying in bed after a particularly exhausting day, Starlight rolled toward Tim. "I've been thinking about us, about marriage." Tim's heart accelerated. "All right. I want to try to be a proper spouse in all the ways." Starlight's voice carried determination mixed with apprehension. "I know what's expected. I'm willing." "Starlight, you don't have to." "I want to. You've been kind, patient. I want to give you what a husband should have from a wife, or whatever I am." Tim sat up, lighting the bedside lamp. In its glow, he saw Starlight's face, earnest, nervous, resolved. "Only if you truly want this, not out of obligation." "I want to try." What followed was tender and careful. Tim, inexperienced but gentle, moved slowly. Starlight, clearly terrified but trying to hide it, cooperated with gritted teeth. When Tim attempted actual intimacy, Starlight's body went rigid, a sharp intake of breath, then another, then a cry that stopped Tim's heart. "God, it hurt?" Starlight gasped, tears streaming down sculpted cheeks. Tim pulled back immediately, his stomach churning with horror. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." "It's not your fault." Starlight curled inward, breathing hard. "This is normal. For someone built like me, different, wrong, it always hurts. That's what they told me." "Who told you that?" "Everyone. The people I grew up with. They said if I insisted on dressing this way, acting this way, being this way, then I'd have to accept the pain, that it was punishment. or just how it is for people who aren't right. Tim felt rage build in his chest, unfamiliar and fierce. That's not true. That can't be true. Pain isn't normal, not like this. How would you know? Starlight's voice carried desperation. You saw me. You know what I am. Neither one thing nor the other. Of course it hurts. Everything about existing like this hurts. Tim climbed out of bed and began dressing. Starlight watched, confused. What are you doing? Getting dressed. So are you. We're riding to town. Now? It's the middle of the night. I don't care. Doc Beasley said his door was open. We're going. Tim's voice, usually so quiet and uncertain, carried absolute conviction. Something's wrong, really wrong, and we're getting help. Tim, I told you this is just how it is for... No. Tim turned to face his spouse, this powerful figure who could break him in half, but sat curled and hurting on their bed. I don't care what anyone told you. I don't care what you've been taught to accept. Pain like that isn't right, and I won't accept it even if you have. Starlight stared at him, tears still falling. You'd really ride through the night? For me? I'd ride through hell itself if it meant helping you. Now get dressed. We're going. The ride to Copper Ridge took 90 minutes in the darkness. Tim pushed his horse harder than he ever had. Starlight, following on the larger mount, needed to bear such weight. They reached Doc Beasley's house just before midnight and pounded on the door until a lamp flickered to life inside. Beasley answered in his nightshirt, immediately alert. Tim? What's wrong? Starlight's hurt. Badly. We need help. The doctor ushered them inside, asking no questions about the hour or circumstances. He led Starlight to his examination room while Tim paced the front parlor, his mind racing with worst possibilities. 45 minutes later, Beasley emerged, looking grave. Tim, I need to speak with you and Starlight together. Come in. In the examination room, Starlight sat on the table, looking smaller somehow despite the size. Beasley addressed them both. Starlight has been suffering from a severe medical condition for years, probably since adolescence. He pulled out a medical text showing them illustrations. The anatomy is complicated, but essentially there's a structural abnormality causing chronic inflammation and scarring. What you attempted tonight aggravated it severely, but the underlying problem has existed for a long time. Can you fix it? Tim asked. With surgery, possibly. It's delicate work and there's risk. But Starlight, you need to understand something. Beasley's voice gentled. You are not broken. You're not being punished. You have a medical condition that wasn't diagnosed because people would rather judge than help. This isn't about being built different in the way you mean. This is treatable medicine. Starlight's face crumpled. I thought everyone said I deserved it, that this was my fault for being what I am. Those people were wrong, cruelly, ignorantly wrong. Beasley turned to Tim. You did right bringing them here. Another few years of this and the damage would have been irreparable. Tim moved to Starlight's side, taking one large hand in both of his. We'll do the surgery, whatever it costs. Tim, we can't afford... I don't care. We'll manage. You're my spouse, my partner, and I won't let you suffer when there's a way to help. Beasley nodded approvingly. The surgery will need to happen in Denver. I can arrange it, but recovery will take months. And Tim, you should know, even after healing, intimacy might not be possible, or it might look different than expected. There are no guarantees. I don't care about that either. Tim met Starlight's eyes. I married you for partnership, Everything else is bonus. You understand me? You don't owe me anything except honesty and effort. That's the deal." Starlight began sobbing in earnest then, great heaving cries that shook the powerful frame. Tim held on, this tiny man embracing his giant spouse, whispering reassurances into the wedding dress that smelled of work and sweat and fear. They stayed in town that night, Doc Beasley insisting Starlight rest before the journey home. In the morning, as they prepared to leave, the doctor pulled Tim aside. "What you did last night, stopping when you saw real pain, seeking help instead of ignoring it, that took more courage than most men possess. Starlight's lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one," Tim said simply. "Starlight's the strongest person I've ever met. Not just physically, emotionally. To survive what they've survived and still be kind, that's real strength." The ride home was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Halfway there, Starlight spoke. "I've never had anyone fight for me before. Everyone else either used me or discarded me. But you saw me hurting and decided that mattered. Why?" Tim considered his answer carefully. "Because you matter. To me, to this ranch, to the life we're building, and because I know what it's like to be told you're less than inadequate, wrong. I won't let anyone tell you that, including yourself. I'm scared of the surgery, of what comes after. Me too, but we'll face it together. That's what partners do." Over the following weeks, they prepared for the trip to Denver. Starlight threw themselves into finishing critical repairs before departure, working with almost manic intensity. Tim understood. Work provided distraction from fear. He helped where he could and stayed out of the way when he couldn't. They also talked more, late into the night, sharing stories they'd kept locked away. Starlight spoke of a childhood caught between identities, never boy enough or girl enough to satisfy anyone, of running away at 15, surviving through strength and stubbornness, of the wedding dress, originally worn as costume in a theater troupe, kept because it represented the one time someone had called them beautiful instead of strange. Tim shared his own history, sickly childhood, father's disappointment, a broken engagement when his fiancée realized just how weak he was, the homestead, inherited from an uncle who'd taken pity on him, represented his last chance at proving he could manage something. "We're quite a pair," Starlight observed one evening, "the strong one who can't be intimate and the weak one who can't defend himself, broken in opposite ways." Maybe that's why it works. We don't need each other to be something we're not. We just need each other as we are. Before they could depart for Denver, trouble arrived in the form of Rough-Shot McGraw. He was everything Tim wasn't. Tall, muscular, loud, and mean. He owned the neighboring ranch and had been trying to buy Tim's land for years, convinced a weakling like Tim couldn't hold it. They encountered him in town while picking up supplies. Rough-Shot stood outside the general store with his cronies, and his eyes lit up when he saw Starlight. "Well now, if it ain't Tim's new bride. Heard you married yourself a freak, Tim, but didn't believe it till now." He circled Starlight, who stood frozen. "What are you supposed to be? Man pretending to be a woman, woman pretending to be a man? Either way, it's unnatural." "Leave us alone, Rough-Shot." Tim's voice shook but held firm. "Or what? You'll fight me. You couldn't fight your way out of a wet paper sack." Rough-Shot reached out to grab Starlight's dress. "Let's see what you're really—" He never finished the sentence. Tim's fist connected with Rough-Shot's jaw with surprising force. The larger man stumbled back, shocked. Tim's knuckles split and bled, but he stood his ground. "Touch my spouse again, and I'll kill you." The words, delivered in Tim's quiet voice, carried absolute sincerity. Roughshot touched his jaw, then looked at Tim with new assessment. Around them, townspeople had stopped to stare. "You just made a big mistake, little man." "The mistake was yours, thinking I wouldn't defend what's mine." Tim's legs trembled, but he didn't back down. "Starlight is my spouse. You disrespect them, you disrespect me, and I won't tolerate that." Roughshot's friends moved to intervene, but Sheriff Dodd stepped forward. "That's enough. McGraw, you started this. Move along." As Roughshot and his crew departed with threats and dark looks, Tim's adrenaline wore off and his knees nearly buckled. Starlight caught him, supporting his weight easily. "You hit him. You actually hit him." "I did." Tim examined his bleeding knuckles. "That hurt more than I expected." "Why would you do that? He could have destroyed you." "Because you're worth defending. Because I'm tired of letting bullies decide what's acceptable. Because—" he looked up at Starlight's face. "Because I love you. I don't know when it happened, but it did. And I won't stand by while someone hurts you." Starlight carried Tim home that day, cradling him like a child despite his protests. That evening, as Tim soaked his bruised hand, Starlight knelt beside him. "No one's ever defended me before, or said they loved me. I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything. Just accept it. Let yourself be loved. Let yourself believe you deserve it." "Even broken like I am?" "You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference." Tim squeezed Starlight's hand with his good one. "And when you're ready, after surgery, after recovery, if you ever want to try intimacy again, we'll do it right. Slow, careful, with a doctor's guidance only if you want." "And if I never want to? If it never works?" "Then we build a life anyway. There's more than one way to be married, more than one way to love someone." The trip to Denver happened 3 weeks later. The surgery lasted 6 hours. Tim paced the hospital corridor the entire time, refusing food or rest. When the surgeon finally emerged, exhausted but satisfied, Tim nearly collapsed with relief. "The surgery went well. The damage was extensive, but we corrected what we could. With proper care and time, Starlight should heal fully." Recovery was slow and painful. Tim rented a small apartment near the hospital, spending his days at Starlight's bedside. He read aloud from newspapers, described the city's chaos, and held Starlight's hand through the worst pain. Money grew tight, but Tim sold his horse and some equipment to cover costs. "You shouldn't have to sacrifice so much," Starlight said one afternoon. "Still weak, but improving." "It's not sacrifice, it's investment. In you, in us, in the life we're building." 6 weeks after surgery, they returned home. The homestead looked neglected after their absence, but neighbors, the few who'd accepted them, had done basic maintenance. Mary Kimball, who'd married her own outcast love, had tended the chickens. Old man Henriksen had repaired a fence section that had collapsed. People cared, Starlight marveled, about us, about our place. "About you," Tim corrected. "You made an impression, the strong one who works hard and judges no one. They value that." Recovery continued through winter. Starlight regained strength gradually, though the powerful build became leaner during the long healing. They worked together on light tasks, re-establishing their partnership, and slowly, carefully, they began exploring intimacy again. This time was different. They communicated constantly, establishing boundaries and checking in. What worked, what didn't, what might work, with adjustment. It was awkward and often frustrating, but it was also genuine. They were learning each other, building something new rather than forcing conformity to old expectations. "It's not perfect," Starlight admitted one night after a partially successful attempt, "but it's ours. That makes it perfect enough." Spring brought new life to the homestead. Starlight's strength returned fully, though changed by the experience. Tim noticed a new confidence in his spouse's bearing, not the defensive posture of someone expecting rejection, but the straightforward presence of someone who knew their worth. One afternoon, as they worked together mending fences, Starlight broached a subject they'd been dancing around. "I've been thinking about the future, about children." Tim set down his hammer. "All right. I can't carry them. Even if the surgery had gone perfectly, it's just not possible. And I know that's important for most people, for continuing a legacy. Are you asking if I'm disappointed? I suppose I am." Tim moved to sit beside Starlight on the fence rail. "I'm not disappointed. Confused about how we'd manage children with our situation, maybe, but not disappointed. If we want children, there are ways. Orphans need homes. We could provide that." "You'd really consider that? Raising someone else's child?" "Why not? We're already someone else's definition of wrong and making it work. Might as well share that with a kid who needs it." 2 years after their marriage, they adopted Pip, a 5-year-old whose parents had died of fever. The boy was small for his age, painfully shy, and terrified of everything. He stared at Starlight with wide eyes on their first meeting. "Are you a giant?" he whispered. "Close enough. Does that scare you?" Pip considered this seriously. "My papa used to say the biggest people have the biggest hearts. Are you big-hearted?" Starlight knelt, bringing their face level with Pip's. "I try to be, and this is Tim. He's small, but he's the bravest person I know. We'd like you to come live with us if you want. Be part of our family." "Even though I'm scared of things?" "Especially because of that. We understand scared. We'll help you be brave." Pip integrated into their household with surprising ease. He followed Starlight everywhere, learning to work the land. And he followed Tim everywhere else, learning to read and calculate and think through problems. Between them, they provided everything the boy needed: strength and gentleness, protection and guidance, acceptance and challenge. One evening, watching Pip play in the yard before bed, Starlight spoke quietly. "We made this, a family, from nothing, from 2 broken people who weren't supposed to fit anywhere." "We're not broken," Tim corrected gently. "We never were, just different, and different isn't wrong." "Took me a long time to believe that." "Took me a long time too, but we learned together. That's what matters." Years passed. Pip grew into a confident young man, inheriting Tim's intelligence and Starlight's work ethic. The homestead prospered. Roughshot McGraw eventually moved away, replaced by friendlier neighbors. Copper Ridge, slowly, grudgingly, accepted the Starlight household as part of the community. On their 10th anniversary, Tim and Starlight stood on their porch, watching the sunset paint the valley gold. Starlight still wore the wedding dress sometimes, though now as choice rather than necessity. They'd added to their wardrobe, but the dress remained special, a symbol of transformation from costume to reality. "Do you ever regret it?" Tim asked. "Answering my advertisement? Coming here?" Starlight pulled Tim close, enveloping him in arms that had saved the ranch 100 times over. "Never. You saw me hurtin' that night and chose to help instead of use. You fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. You loved me when I didn't know I could be loved. They paused. You gave me a life, a real one, not performing or surviving, but actually living. You gave me courage, showed me that strength comes in different forms. That being small doesn't mean being weak. They stood together as darkness fell, two people who'd been told their whole lives they were wrong, proving that sometimes wrong plus wrong equals exactly right. Inside, Pip called them for dinner. Their family waited. Their life, built from broken pieces, stood solid and true. And in that moment, watching stars emerge over their land, neither Tim nor Starlight would have changed a single thing. Not the pain, not the struggle, not the hardship. Because all of it had led here, to this porch, this land, this life, to each other. Sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the most painful beginnings. Sometimes the strongest foundations are built from shattered pieces. And sometimes love requires not perfection, but simply the courage to see someone's pain and say, "Let me help, let me stay, let me love you exactly as you are." That was the lesson the virgin bride and the lonely cowboy learned together, and it was worth every moment of hurt to reach the healing that followed.